Hey everyone, I got asked a couple of really good questions on the channel over the last few days. I've been away for a week, obviously, in case, you've noticed me missing. So here I am, I'm back again. So there were a couple of questions. One was about inflammatory markers, and the other one was about inflammation and toxicity since HPV vaccines. Obviously, everyone on the planet responds differently to medications, they respond differently to vaccines. So having a one-step approach to all medications for all people is a really dangerous thing, as you can imagine. So, and once again, that's what we're seeing in the rollout around the world at the moment. So, with inflammatory markers, there's things like CRP, C-reactive protein. It's a really common marker for cancer. It has no correlation to cancer. It just indicates that there's high levels of inflammation in the body. There's another one called the erythrosedimentation rate, which is about how quickly the red blood cells coagulate. And when I do live blood screenings, the things that I tend to see that are high in these, a third one that I use a lot is fibrin. So fibrin or fibrinogen. Fibrin is a acute phase protein, an acute phase protein that creates stickiness in the blood. So anything that creates stickiness and inflammation in the blood can be a sign that your body may create cancer down the track. So it's not a cancer marker particularly, but if you've got high level of the sedimentation rate, if you've got high levels of CRP, if you've got high levels of fibrin and fibrinogen, then medically they might say, oh, well, you've got an infection, or, oh, well, you might be in a bit of pain. And people often think of inflammation to be specifically with pain only. But once again, one of the things that I've found doing weight loss with people for 20 years and doing the VLAs for 15 years, so my bioimpedance screening technology that I have a look and you can actually see the levels of inflammation in people's bodies, is that initially when you're inflamed, your body will retain fluid. So if you have medications or foods or drugs or anything, or alcohol or sugar or wheat or dairy or anything that makes you feel bloated or makes you feel swollen, then that can be a bit of a sign that your body's getting inflamed after something. It can happen after stress. I've got a friend who can put on 2, 3, 4 kilos in a week with stress, and it's not from eating too much. I know there's emotional eaters, but this is not her. So she can eat nothing and put on kilos. So what can happen with stress hormones, and once again, these are really good markers, things like cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that our adrenals make when we're under stress, and cortisol is a fat storing hormone, but particularly it makes us store fat, abdominal fat. And hormone wise, there's like a hierarchy of hormones in the body. So when our body's running on stress hormones, that's the number one priority in the body. The body starts forgetting everything else. And this is why cancer or chronic disease and stress is so connected. My brother's a GP and here in Australia, and he's just had his COVID shot. And he actually said to someone who asked him, well, I believe that people having reactions, it's because they're stressed. So don't stress about it. Which is interesting coming from a GP who says, I trust the science. And but that's his first thing. And I'm seeing a lot of that as well. People who are getting chronic illness, that there's been sometimes a lot of stress preceding. And whenever I see people with cancer or chronic illness in my clinic, I say, okay, so what happened in the few years before that? And then quite often they say, well, I had a divorce, I did this, I lost a child, I had to go overseas and have 27 vaccines. People nearly always have a story before chronic illness takes hand. One of my clients, she was 16 and had a hepatitis B vaccine, and since then her immune system has never been right. So, and I think sometimes medications of all sorts, this is not an thingamajig thing, it's just medications, we don't know how they all work. Doctors don't know how they work. Scientists don't know how they work. We've got 24,000 genes in our body. We've got, we've just got so much going on in our body with trillions of mechanisms happening every second. Doctors and scientists don't know how everything interacts with everything in the body, and it's fibbing if they say they do. And everyone is different, so everybody metabolizes things differently in the system. So what might be really awful for me might be absolutely fine for someone else and if I'm getting plenty of vitamin D by out walking every day in the sunshine, I might not have the same reactions to a drug or a vaccine or a medication that you might have if it's in the middle of winter somewhere in the world. So inflammatory markers, so basically things like chronic disease tends to have several things going. So in order to develop chronic illness, we tend to have inflammation, we tend to have immune dysfunction, and we tend to have gut irregularities. Now, that doesn't mean that you feel your gut all the time, but that's where 90% of our immune system is. Our small intestine is where we make serotonin. Our appendix, we make anti-parasitic hormones. The gut affects our hormones around the body. So there's so much that happens between those three things, our inflammatory systems or our anti-inflammatory systems, our immune systems, and our gut. Like the three of those really have to be out of balance in order to develop chronic illness. So it's about quenching the inflammation, cleaning up the diet. You can't do it without cleaning up the diet. You've got to think about what you're breathing in, you've got to think about what you're eating and drinking, and you've got to think about what you're thinking. And without doing all of those, you're not going to clean up your inflammation and your toxicity. So it's about waking up every day and thinking, how am I today? Thank you, body. Look after me today. I know you'll do the best you can do. And then thinking, is this food inflammatory for me, or is this food anti-inflammatory? And eating the simplest things that you possibly can. One of the cleanest diets is the autoimmune paleo diet. So basically the paleo diet is eating like our ancestors did 10,000 years ago, but you go one step further and it's the autoimmune paleo diet. And what that does is also takes out the things that we know have been modified. So there's a lot of nuts and seeds that you can't have in the autoimmune paleo diet because a lot of nuts and seeds have been genetically modified. Things that have been genetically modified, we don't know how they're affecting our genes. If we've got chronic inflammation and illness, our genes have been modified and we are pro-inflammatory. Our immune system is attacking ourselves. There's more than 120 autoimmune diseases out there. So we've got to think about purifying our water. We have to think about purifying our thoughts. We've got to think about eating purified foods. Clients here, got to go. Take care. Love you. Bye.